House Hollard is a house of the Crownlands that by the time of the main book series is nearly extinct. They were once sworn to House Darklyn of Duskendale, dating back hundreds of years prior to Aegon's conquest. They blazoned their arms with berry red and pink, 3 golden crowns on blue chief. During the Age of Heroes, the Hollards were the bannermen and closest allies to House Darklyn. Back in these ancient times, 3 of House Hollard's daughters wed the Darklyn Kings of Duskendale, which indicates just how closely tied to House Darklyn they were. We do not know much about their actions during the Targaryen Era of Westeros. However, we can make some assumptions based on the actions of their liege lords, House Darklyn. Given that Lord Darklyn was a supporter of Maegor the Cruel during his reign between the years of 42 and 48 AC, we can surmise House Hollard too followed their lord in this support. The idea can also be extended to the Dance of the Dragons, where House Darklyn supported Rhaenyra Targaryen's Black faction. House Hollard's biggest impact on the history of the Seven Kingdoms comes during the reign of King Aerys II Targaryen, more commonly known as the Mad King. Their liege lords, the Darklyns, were for the most part on good terms with the Iron Throne and House Targaryen, but all of that ended with the Defiance of Duskendale. Lord Dennis Darklyn desired a charter granting Duskendale greater autonomy from King's Landing, but the request was denied by Lord Tywin Lannister, the Hand of the King. According to the small folk of Duskendale who lived through the events, Lord Dennis was convinced by his wife, Lady Sarala of Myr, to take the king captive in 277 AC. Sir Simon Hollard slew Sir Gawain Gaunt of the Kingsguard during the altercation that led to Aerys' capture. Aerys was held as a prisoner for half a year, with Tywin's army waiting outside of Duskendale. The situation remained at an impasse until Sir Barristan the Bold of the Kingsguard secretly entered the Dunfort and rescued the king. Having lost his hostage, Lord Dennis had no other option than to surrender at once. He bent the knee and begged for mercy, but the king demanded his head and all of his family's. Lady Sarala, called the Lace Serpent for her supposed poison of her words, was burned alive and had her tongue and female parts torn out. Other than Sir Simon Hollard, we know that a John Hollard, who was married to Lord Dennis Darklyn's sister, was also part of the Defiance. A Robin Hollard, who was a squire at this time, was also known to have taken part. From what we can gather from the roles of these men and their close relationship between House Hollard and the Darklyns, is that House Hollard took an active role in the support of House Darklyn during the Defiance of Duskendale, and would thus face similar punishments as their liege lords. Their lands were taken, their castle torn down, and its members executed, with only young Dontos Hollard, Simon's nephew, being spared, because Barristan Selmy asked for mercy, which was granted. It has been speculated that Dontos' father, Stephen Hollard, having died before the Defiance, may have been a factor into why Dontos was given clemency. Thus, a young Dontos was taken to King's Landing and served there as a squire for many years. By the events of A Game of Thrones, in the year 298 AC, Sir Dontos is now at court in King's Landing after King Joffrey I Baratheon's ascension to the Iron Throne. When Sansa Stark, Joffrey's betrothed, comes to plead for mercy for her father, Lord Eddard Stark, who had attempted to overthrow Joffrey, stating he was not Robert Baratheon's true-born son, a drunken Dontos starts to hail Sansa, but is warned away by Sir Balon Swan. Sansa later sees Lord Peter Baelish, Littlefinger, chatting with Dontos and Balon. By the events of A Clash of Kings, during the War of Five Kings, Sir Dontos intends to ride in the tourney on King Joffrey's name day at the Red Keep, with his first match being against Lothar Brune. However, Dontos is too drunk and arrives in the lists naked except for his breastplate and helm. He gives up chasing his stallion and asks for wine. Joffrey, being a prickly person at best, takes this as a personal insult and commands that Dontos be put to death by drowning in a cask of wine. However, the pleading of Sansa saves his life by suggesting Dontos be made the king's new fool. Thus Dontos is stripped of his knighthood and from now on would act as the king's fool. Sansa later receives an anonymous note saying, "Come to the Godswood tonight if you want to go home." In the Godswood, Sansa meets with Dontos, who promises to help her escape her imprisonment, even though Sansa is not sure how he could possibly be able to do this. Drawing inspiration from the tales of Florian the Fool and Jonquil, Dontos pleads to serve Sansa and asks for her patience, for they can only escape at the right time. Dontos insists they can only meet secretly in the Godswood. During one of these visits, he tells Sansa that a friend of his will hire a ship to take them away at the right moment. As the king's fool, Dontos wears red and yellow motley and is always at the king's beckoning command. Since Dontos was unable to ride his horse at the tourney, Joffrey decrees that his new fool must always be a horse. Dontos thus uses a broomstick horse as his new steed. He wears tin armor and carries a melon as a morning star. When Joffrey orders Sandor Clegane to hit Sansa, Joffrey intervenes and whacks the girl on the head with the melon morning star. A displeased Joffrey responds by having Ser Boros punch and humiliate Sansa. During the Battle of the Blackwater, Dontos serves as a fool in the Queen's ballroom in Maegor's Holdfast, attempting to entertain the ladies taking shelter there by chasing them on his fake horse to little effect. Where the battle appears to go in the favour of Stannis Baratheon, Dontos tells Sansa to lock herself in her bedroom while the city is sacked, hoping it would be the safest place for her. But thanks to the Tyrell reinforcements arriving just in time, the defenders win the day. After the battle ends, a joyous Dontos comes to Sansa's room to tell her that the Lannisters had won. At the award ceremony after the battle, it is announced that King Joffrey will now marry Margaery Tyrell instead of Sansa Stark. Sansa is delighted by this, but Dontos meets her in the Godswood and warns her that she will still be Joffrey's hostage and perhaps his mistress, a fate possibly worse than being his wife. The fool says they will flee the night of Joffrey's wedding and gives her a silver hairnet with black amethyst from a shrine. During the events of A Storm of Swords, Sansa tells Ser Dontos about the Tyrell plot to marry her to Willis Tyrell, saying she will no longer need his help to escape. But Dontos warns her not to trust the Tyrells, stating they only want Sansa's claim to Winterfell just like the Lannisters. Dontos goes on to inform Lord Peter Baelish of this plot. Peter then informs Lord Tywin Lannister, the Hand of the King. Tywin prevents the marriage by plotting to have Sansa marry his own son, Tyrion Lannister, instead. Dontos attends the wedding of Sansa to Tyrion, where he is used as a footstool by Tyrion, so the dwarf can place the marriage cloak around the shoulders of his much taller bride. Sansa continues to meet Dontos in the Godswood every night, where he reassures her that she will escape the night of Joffrey's wedding, what clothing she should prepare for the escape, and ensuring that she must wear to the wedding the hairnet he gave her. On the morning of Joffrey's wedding to Margaery, Dontos gallops on his broomstick as the nobles break their fast in the Queen's ballroom. After the wedding at the feast, Joffrey chokes to death, and Queen Cersei Lannister accuses Tyrion and Sansa, who at this point has already fled the throne room in terror of the murder. Sansa meets a drunken Dontos in the Godswood, where she realises that one of the amethysts from her hairnet is now missing. Instead of his fool's motley, Dontos has donned his old Hollard shawlcoat. After the pair discreetly leave the Red Keep, Oswell Kettleblack rows them into Blackwater Bay on a small skiff. Oswell takes the pair to the Merlin King, aboard which are Lord Peter Baelish and Sir Lothar Brune. Once Sansa and Oswell are aboard the ship, Dontos asks for his payment of 10,000 gold dragons, as promised by Littlefinger, before he rows back to the capital. Instead, Peter orders Dontos killed. 3 men then raise their crossbows and fire at Dontos. One bolt takes him in the chest, while another rips into his throat and belly. When Dontos is dead, Lothar tosses a torch on top of his corpse, burning the skiff with Dontos. Littlefinger justifies the murder to Sansa by claiming that once Dontos had spent his gold on wine, he would have sold the information he had about her to another party. He also tells Sansa he was the one behind Dontos' actions, ever since she saved his life at the tourney. The Lannisters unsuccessfully search King's Landing for Dontos and Sansa, who have seemingly now left without a trace. During Tyrion Lannister's trial for the murder of Joffrey, Grand Maester Pycelle says that Joffrey had been poisoned with the Strangler. When Varys helps Tyrion escape, the Master of Whisperers reveals that Dontos and Sansa had been spotted on the Serpentine steps of the Red Keep on the night of Joffrey's death, but they have not been seen since. At the Baelish Tower in the Fingers, Littlefinger tells Sansa that Dontos was not involved in Joffrey's murder, except for making sure that she wore the hairnet to the wedding. Peter then suggests that Olenna Tyrell removed the amethyst from Sansa's hair and poisoned Joffrey. By the events of A Feast for Crows, Brienne of Tarth has sworn to find and save Sansa Stark, as no one in King's Landing knows what happened to her. But she does learn that Dontos disappeared from King's Landing at the same time Sansa did, and decided he must have helped her escape. She searches for Sansa and Dontos, asking travellers if they had seen a highborn maid of 13 with blue eyes and auburn hair, accompanied by a portly man who may be dressed as a fool or a knight. Brienne encounters the Shoreditch of the Mad Mouse, who perceives the identities behind her questions, and tells her that he's also seeking Sansa and Dontos for the large reward Aerys is offering. While at Duskendale, Brienne speaks to the Maester of the Dunfort, who tells her of the Defiance of Duskendale and the destruction of all of House Hollard except for Dontos. The Maester tells her that Dontos never returned to Duskendale, and that if he did help murder King Joffrey, he feels he would hide anywhere but Duskendale. While travelling on the road to Maidenpool, Brienne sees the ruins of Hollard Castle and thinks that Dontos may have been born there. Once Sansa Stark has reached the Vale and has assumed the identity of Elaine Stone at the Eyrie, she for now at least seems relatively safe. Despite Dontos' prime motivation being money, Sansa remembers him as her poor old drunken Florian. With the death of Sir Dontos Hollard, it means that House Hollard is now considered extinct.